Wells finals. I just wanted to come on, share my thoughts on this match because I haven't come on live for a while talking about pro tennis because honestly, not much has excited me. If Novak is in the tournament, I love Novak, but I know he's going to win. And if Rafa or Novak are not in the tournament, I haven't really felt that the tournament's been that important because let's face it, every time a next gener does well in a tournament, like Felix Auger-Aliassime or anybody you can really think of, Berrettini, it hasn't really meant much for a changing of the guard and that, tennis will be in good hands. It's been kind of scary that what's going to happen when Rafa, Federer's already left, when Novak leaves, what's going to happen to the sport? I think we've all been worried about that. I think that's the elephant in the room. But now with the emergence of Carlos Alcaraz, I think tennis is in really good hands. This guy is the real deal. He's electric. He's a fighter. He has a positive attitude. He's super young. Like he's at an age to where he's winning. He's winning a lot of matches to where he can start to set, maybe not get near, the chances of getting near Federer and Nadal and Djokovic, that's you don't even think about that yet. But I think he can definitely be one of the all-time greats as far as being at least up there with somebody like a McEnroe or a Borg or a Lendl to where he can get 7 or 8. Agassi, let's see what happens after that. But he's going to be there for a long time if he doesn't get hurt, knock on wood. And Medvedev, he's 27, so he's a little older, but I think, at least for the next 5 or 6 years, I think these two are going to be battling a lot, and it's going to be great for the game because they're just both awesome tennis players, number one. And I think also the contrast in style is going to be very interesting to watch. You have Alcaraz, who kind of plays like Rafa a lot, very gritty, big, heavy spin balls on the forehand, the backhand. All right, we got a nice smiley face. Big, spinny, heavy forehand and backhand balls. And he's just got that kind of Rafa fighting spirit. So it reminds you of Rafa. Then you have Medvedev, who is just really kind of funny to watch in a lot of ways. He's very quirky. You just never know what he's going to do. Sometimes he goes out there moody. Other times he goes in lockdown mode like Novak Djokovic. I think he gives great interviews. When I first started to watch Medvedev, I was not a fan. I got to be honest. His quirky, this way he hits the ball just kind of looks a little weird. Maybe it's not the prettiest stroke to watch. And also some of the things that he would do in the matches in the beginning were rubbing me the wrong way. But the more I watch Medvedev and watch his interviews, I'm starting to really appreciate his style of play, number one. I'm starting to also really appreciate his personality. I really like the guy now. I think he's funny, but also he seems to also be very sensitive and insightful and gives a lot of respect, a ton of respect to the GOATs. And so I'm really liking Medvedev. So I like Medvedev. I like Alcaraz. I think that this is the first final to be excited about that the big three are not a part of. Think about that. This is the first meaningful final that we've had in about 20 years without the big three. Let me know if you agree with that. That's what really hit me as I woke up this morning. I'm like, I'm actually excited about this final. And I have not been excited about a final unless one of the big three is in the final. Other than that, I haven't cared because I didn't really think it meant anything. If there's another tour event and Nadal, Djokovic, or Federer is not in the final, I don't really care because I know once a Grand Slam comes up that they're not going to actually be there if Rafa, Federer, and Djokovic had anything to say about it for the last 20 years. But now these guys, I think even with Rafa in the tournament or with Djokovic in the tournament, Medvedev could beat, he's shown that he can beat the very best players on the tour. Alcaraz has already won the U.S. Open. Now, he's looking really, really strong. He looks like he's embracing the idea of being number one. He looks like he's embracing the idea of being the replacement to the GOATs, that he's not afraid of it, that he loves the challenge, that he's enjoying himself. So I think that this is going to be a great match. And I'll just leave you guys with my final thoughts as far as who I think is going to win. I think that, it could go either way. It could definitely go either way. But I'm going to pick Alcaraz for the fact that he seems to really enjoy this surface. You hear a lot of the players, and Medvedev has maybe been the most vocal, saying that the courts at Indian Wells are too slow. And Medvedev, since he hits a flatter ball, wants the ball to go through the court more. He's a very consistent player, so you think he'd like the slow, consistent kind of style of play. But since he hits the flat ball, he wants his ball to be able to go through the court. Where Alcaraz has more of a heavy game. His ball is very, very spinny. And I think when you play on a slower, gritty court, even though the court is slower, but usually when it's slower and gritty, a topspin ball that can really kick at you can do some damage. So even though maybe Alcaraz can't hit as many winners as you normally see on other surfaces, where it's a little faster, I think you're still going to see his ball have more an effect on Medvedev than maybe Medvedev's able to do to Alcaraz. And I think also the fact that all week Alcaraz hasn't really complained about the surface. He seems to be enjoying Indian Wells. He says he loves tennis paradise. He loves being there. I haven't heard him say one negative thing about the court or anything. So I think that his attitude is going to be just maybe a little, and believe me, when Medvedev gets on a roll and he starts to fight, he's one of the toughest fighters in the history of tennis. So if you can go out there and you can fight against Novak Djokovic in the finals of the U.S. Open, you can win. You have a very strong mind. But I think that if he starts out and he starts not hitting the ball well, or he gets down a little bit, it might be a little easier for him to go to the pity towel and start to be like, oh, well, this is not my surface anyway, and I've had a great week, and I've done better than I thought I was going to do. I always lose early here. So I think that Alcaraz just feels that he's got more to prove. I think now he's a young guy and he's starting to emerge. I think he really wants to take the throne quickly and show the world that he is the next gen, that we finally really do have a next gen. We've been throwing that term out, next gen, for probably about 10 years now. And there's been no next gen. Let's face it, there's only been the old school legends, the GOATs, controlling the game of tennis, Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer. But now this is really the chance. Do you think Medvedev will become a force on clay? So that's the other thing, too, that I think is tough about when you see Medvedev doing so well. Medvedev has been on an incredible streak. He's won 3 tournaments in a row now. They've all been on hard court. And if he wins this tournament, it'll be 4 tournaments in a row. But even if he goes 3 tournaments and then he gets to the finals, he's definitely the hottest player on tour. But when they go the clay, that can really just throw a wrench in Medvedev's momentum. This is kind of like bad timing for Medvedev to get so hot, because then they're going to go the clay, and he typically doesn't do well on the clay, and then they're going to go to Wimbledon, and he hasn't done great at Wimbledon yet either. So, it could be like a solid 3 or 4 months of a Medvedev slump, where I don't think that that's going to happen to Alcaraz. I think Alcaraz is only going to build from his hard court season. We don't know. It's not a given that Medvedev is going to build from his hard court season and continue to play great on the clay, because he's never really done so. And he's also, just like he complains about this court being slow, he loves to complain about playing on clay. He's even in one match, you can see him on video, where he's telling his coach, like, get me off the court, like, take me out of this match. I hate this surface. So Andy Murray struggled on clay for many years, but then learned how to, he might be able to do it. I'm not saying Medvedev can't do well on clay. I'm just saying that it's an X factor. You don't know. Where I'm pretty sure that Alcaraz is going to take his hard court season in this great Indian Wells, and we'll see how he does in Miami. Novak's not allowed to play Miami, which I think is a shame. Alcaraz could win this tournament. He could do very well in Miami. And I think as long as he comes out of these next 2 tournaments healthy, it's going to help his momentum going into the clay court. He's just going to be feeling great. He's going to think, man, if I did this awesome on the hard court, I grew up on the red clay. I love clay. and he's going to have an awesome clay court season, I think. And I would not be surprised, especially Rafa is starting to become, he is every year, right? It's like, oh, how's Rafa going to do? Is he healthy? Can he do it? Is he too old? Is he too old and hurt? And then he comes and he just destroys everybody at the French Open. So don't be surprised if Rafa does it again. However, I mean, everything's looking very good for Alcaraz. If Alcaraz can do well here, do well in Miami, and not get hurt, his clay court season could be incredible. Do you think Sinner lacks a killer instinct against a lot of these other top players? That's another thing I was thinking about. I like Outlaws. All his questions are very good. Guys ask questions. But Sinner, it's kind of funny. A couple of years ago, we were thinking, oh, Sinner, he's so young and he's doing so great. And he was kind of the big next-gen hopeful, a little similar to Alcaraz, where everybody's like looking, we've been looking for years. Like I said, we've been talking about next-gen for 10-plus years. And so Sinner was one of those where he thought, and I'm not saying Sinner's not the real deal. I'm not saying Sinner's not a great player and that he will not win a Grand Slam. I think maybe he can. But it certainly doesn't look as promising as Alcaraz. Like we were looking at Sinner going, well, maybe this guy. And he is young. And wow, he's pretty good for being so young. But now his star is starting to not shine as brightly, especially when you look at what Alcaraz is doing out there. He just has that it factor that I don't think Sinner does have. I'm not saying Sinner doesn't have a killer instinct or doesn't want to do well. But I think that Alcaraz, clearly when you watch him play, he's a superstar. I don't really look at Sinner and go, oh my God, that guy's a superstar. Oh my God, that guy is definitely going to win so many Grand Slams. When I look at Alcaraz, it's a no-brainer, right? It's like watching Serena Williams when she came out, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. When you saw those people play, and they came out and you saw what they're capable of at an early age, you're thinking, yeah, I mean, clearly it's a no-brainer. And Alcaraz is accomplishing some of this, even doing better than some of the GOATs at a younger age. There's some records that he's starting to hold. How many match wins does he have? I think there's a 300 or something like that. I know he has a ton of match wins on the tour for being so young. He's already got a Grand Slam title. I mean, he could clearly do it. Sinner lacks charisma, spark, that the other top guy. Yeah, I think so. I think that Sinner, and there's nothing wrong with Sinner. I mean, I love Sinner, and I think that he's a true professional. And I don't want to start bashing on Sinner, but I'm saying if you're comparing Sinner to Alcaraz, it's just not as obvious that he's going to be holding a lot of Grand Slam titles. When you look at Alcaraz, it looks very obvious to me. Sinner is like a robot. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He just doesn't seem to have that pizzazz and that it factor. You can't describe the it factor until you see it. And you're like, oh yeah, that's it. Like, that's it for sure. And Sinner doesn't have it. Tsitsipas for a while looked like he had the it factor, but this never really has come through yet. He's come close. You can't teach talent and versatility. Yeah, that's another thing about you can't and you can. I mean, let's not. What a job, because his coach Ferrero has been there since he's been a kid. Lots of times when you have a big name coach like Patrick Mouratoglou or any of the big coaches that we've seen throughout the years who become famous coaches, Tony Roach with Lendl. Whenever you have a big name coach, it's usually they take over when the pro has already made it. Ferrero's been there developing this kid's game. This kid, what an advantage to be able to be taught by a world #1 player, a true just professional of the game at the highest level from a young age. So his mind is years ahead of where it should be for a 19-year-old because of the fact that he got to train with Ferrero. His game is so developed. Look how often he will even, one thing that impresses me, he's obviously a great baseliner and reminds me of Rafa, the way he runs around and he doesn't always do a buggy whip, but often he'll do a buggy whip forehand. The ball's very spinny and he's just explosive. He's just dangerous off the ground. But how often he'll even take a second serve from his opponent and block it back and go to the net and then put away beautiful volleys. Like he had an awesome backhand return up the line, inside in backhand up the line, second serve. Then he came in and hit an unbelievably gorgeous backhand volley right through the court down the other side of the line. So, he's so developed. He's got amazing drop shot, one of the best drop shots in the history, one of the most well-disguised drop shots in the history of tennis on both the forehand and the backhand. His backhand style to me reminds me of Novak Djokovic. Some people have said that he's the fastest tennis player they've ever seen. I mean, think about that. We're talking about Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, some of the greatest mover the game has ever seen. And people who have played against all these players say, wow, Alcaraz is the fastest player they've ever played against. So, I mean, this kid literally doesn't have a weakness. I cannot see a weakness. Maybe it's sometimes he can get a little bit erratic. I mean, you have to go really, really nitpicky to start to talk negatively about Alcaraz's game. His attitude is strong. It's off the charts positive. He's a fighter. He seems to enjoy pressure. The serve is big. Maybe the serve is the one thing that occasionally he can go into some double faults. Right. His serve could be better. Right. His serve could be better. But, I mean, it's not bad. It's certainly not bad. By the way, what do you think of Patrick Mouratoglou? I mean, I think the guy is maxing out on every way possible. I mean, he's an incredible marketer. He makes great YouTube, Instagram videos. He seems to be working with all levels. He gets his name attached to the biggest names in tennis. He's done a very good job with Holger Rune, who, again, seems to have kind of the X factor, but then he's also kind of like a brat and a baby. And so you don't know if that's going to hold him back. And plus, you don't know if he's ever going to be embraced. I mean, Alcaraz right now is being so embraced by the tennis world. We are, I know I am. Let me know what you guys think. I am so grateful for Carlos Alcaraz because as somebody who's loved tennis their whole life, I mean, I love tennis. I'm passionate about tennis. I've been a little bored and very concerned about the future of tennis because I just haven't believed in the next gen, the 10, 12-year-old next gen revolution, right? I mean, when was the next gen tournament even started? I think it's been a while. And there just hasn't been a next gen. What next gen? Where's the next gen? So this is really finally the first next gen guy. Alcaraz will do big things in the sport, but will never be a GOAT like Tomic. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, so that's a good example. Lots of time people thought, oh, Bernard Tomic's going to be a great player. I mean, that lasted for like a year. He was really good like in his late teens, early 20s, and he just crashed hard. But yeah, I mean, Alcaraz, clearly he's the first guy who I think it's pretty obvious that he is going to be a real legit champion. We've been kind of looking at a lot of people going, well, maybe. Berrettini, maybe. Right? Tsitsipas, maybe. But it hasn't happened. Alcaraz is like, clearly, it's already happening. It's already happening. Every week that he steps on the court, he's doing something pretty damn special. Okay? So I just hope that with his physicality of his game, kind of the same concerns that people had about Rafa his whole career, but he's made it a pretty long time. Sure, he's had a lot of injuries, a lot of setbacks, but he always comes back. But he's pretty physical out there. And he's going pretty hard out there. So you just hope and pray that he doesn't get injured early in his career. But if the guy can stay healthy, there's just no way he's not going to hold a lot of Grand Slam titles. What about Holger Rune? His physicality lets him down, and his immaturity. I think it's his immaturity. I think Rune, he's got that fighting mentality. So he's a fighter. He's feisty. He obviously has big weapons. Talking about Patrick Mouratoglou, what you guys asked me about him. I think I just completely botched his last name, but Patrick's definitely helped his serve. His serve has gotten better and bigger. His forehand's awesome. His backhand, it's all right. But, I mean, clearly a guy who can go out there and just do damage against anybody and compete with the best. I mean, he had an incredible match against Novak where he beat Novak. And Novak gave him a very nice congratulations at the net, which I thought was really classy. And so he could definitely be up there, but I think everybody's chasing Alcaraz. I think he's the chosen one. And now it'll be interesting, kind of like when you saw Federer come along and everybody decide, okay, Federer is the next guy. And there'll be no one close to him for a long time. Then all of a sudden Rafael Nadal came along. Is there somebody a year or 2 or 3 younger than Alcaraz that all of a sudden, once Alcaraz takes over and he starts to dominate, when Novak starts to fade away a little bit, I think then the stage right now, the way it's set, is just like it's a clear path for Alcaraz to dominate for the next 10 years. But maybe there's a player 2 or 3 that we don't even know yet that's about to emerge on the tour. And they might be his Rafa Nadal. And then maybe just behind that, there's a Novak Djokovic. I don't know. It'd be pretty amazing, probably improbable, but it could be. So, but yeah, I think today's final is going to be great. I hope Medvedev stays healthy, because I think that Medvedev, for the next 5 years, since he's 27, for the next 5 years at least, he could be stepping out there on the court against Alcaraz pretty consistently. And that they might be the biggest rivalry going back and forth, but it's kind of unusual, right? Because they're not really close. They're not that close in age. Alcaraz is 19. Medvedev is 27. I can't remember the last time you had such a big age gap where you had such a consistent rivalry going on. I guess maybe Connors and McEnroe, they had a pretty good age gap between the two. So it's happened before, but we've just been so used to Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. And even though Federer is older, he's not that much older. He's, I think, like 5 years older than those other guys, 5 or 6 years older. So yeah, anyway, that's it, guys. Ferreira started coaching Alcaraz 2019. He was 16. Okay, 16. I thought he was 13. But anyway, he's obviously had some amazing coaching, and he's got a beautiful game. I love the fact that, for somebody who's so great at the baseline, he comes to the net a lot. He's looking for that net. You can see when he hits a big shot, lots of times he'll be behind the baseline. He'll hit a big shot. He'll see his opponent start to run to the other side, and he closes quick on the net. So I love that a guy that is young has such a well-rounded game. He's already got a really nice slice backhand. That's hard to develop for a youngster. He's very good at coming to the net. He's got beautiful touch. He's explosive and hits the ball. He hits the crap out of the ball. And he hits the ball with heavy spin, and he hits through the court. It's not a lot of people who can do all that, obviously. So he's special. And I know we've been talking about him mostly on this live stream, but don't count Medvedev out today. That guy is a fighter. Medvedev reminds me a lot of Novak when he gets hot. He goes in, he plays lockdown tennis. Like when Medvedev gets hot, it becomes very hard to win a point off the guy. So if he can get that going today, if he can get that same kind of lockdown spirit going against Alcaraz, he can really frustrate him, because Medvedev gets so good and so hot that you literally think, how do you win 1 point against the guy? That's how good Medvedev is when he's at his best. And remember, he hasn't lost a match in probably over a month now, I guess, right? He's won 3 tournaments in a row. So it's probably been over a month since he's lost a tennis match, and he's played a lot of matches. He's played a lot of matches in the last month. So, Medvedev, definitely don't count him out. I think it'd go either way. I favor Alcaraz slightly, and that's it. So on your way out, I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Give this video a like. Thanks for joining me on this. Hopefully there'll be a lot more Alcaraz Medvedev matches, and I will come on and do more live streams, because these are the only 2 guys. They're the only 2 guys at the moment that get me excited about tennis, other than Novak and Rafa. Roger, wish you were still out there, but yeah. Novak and Rafa, and these 2 guys, only male players on tour I'm excited about. So hopefully they continue to stay healthy and meet each other a lot in matches. I think it's the next big rivalry in tennis. Take care.